Welcome, everyone. Just starting. So everybody online, everybody here, Tushita, thank you so much. So many other things can distract us and take up our time, but we all came here one way or another, virtually or bodily. So thank you, everyone. I hope it'll be worthwhile to at least listen to what a very great yogi, saint, scholar had to say about very basic practice. Let's start with motivation and calming the mind a little bit with the breath awareness. So we're all familiar with what motivation means, but somehow we need to make it real, don't we? We have to make it something meaningful, not just words. So we need to remember in a very direct sort of gut level way how we ourselves have problems, suffering of all kinds, pain, anxiety, difficulties come up, one kind and another. That's so clear. And even if we're half awake, we can't help but see how much sheer misery there is in the world. If we can get beyond our bubble of self-concern and, the entertaining we engage in, entertaining of ourselves, we can see clearly how beings are suffering a tremendous amount, a great deal. And that whereas they might not be suffering tremendously bodily or mentally right now, we can see how there's so much lack of satisfaction, of final satisfaction. It's just not there. And many people are just totally lost, without a refuge, without a guide, without proper, being cared for, without proper affection or kindness being shown to them, and often the complete opposite being shown to them. So anyway, each one of us can choose what moves us the most, what reminds us in the most powerful way of human and animal or whatever suffering. And then remembering also how we totally depend on other people. Let us generate some kind of sincere wish, sincere heartfelt wish for others, for beings to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So please spend some time on the motivation in your own way, which is most helpful for you. Remembering the people you need to remember for it to be meaningful and not just a kind of ritual exercise that we engage in before meditation, before the main session. And then we can, for a little while, practice the breath awareness, bringing the attention right to this moment, with the breath entering and leaving the nostrils. Coming back again and again to the breath when we are diverted, distracted by the thinking mind, or by thoughts of past or future and so forth. We just let it go gently but firmly and come back to the breath. Sensation of breath at the nostrils, or if you prefer, at the abdomen. So we can also, we could rejoice also to create some positive energy before the session, even more positive energy. Let's rejoice at our opportunity to sit and reflect, listen, practice together. Not something to take for granted. Since we've been talking about the precious human life, if one were to really go into it very deeply again and again and again, we would see how the teachings say we would then realize the inestimable value of this human incarnation, and we would truly rejoice at having it and would not waste it in any manner. So the fact that we have some interest and can listen to some of these great teachings by one of the greatest scholar saints ever to have lived, you know, in a understandable translation. This is something very wonderful. And we can also remember the basic instructions that are given in the teachings, which can be very useful to remember. You know, these traditional, there's a meaning, there's a reason behind all of the traditional instructions in the authentic parampara, authentic lineage, or, you know, the authentic stream of instructions coming from Lord Buddha. So one of them, as you know, and we went through them last week, but it's always good to repeat. Of course, as students, and I include myself here as a student, we try to have an unbiased mind, so a mind that is willing to listen to things we haven't listened to before, or to opinions or perspectives that seem strange to us perhaps in the beginning. So we're unbiased. We are, of course, we have this human intelligence. We are going to be intelligent about these things and persevering. We should have some energy to listen and so forth. We should also regard ourselves as a sick person. This can be helpful. Also to overcome any pride we may have, that I know it, you know, I've heard this already, I know it, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, the reason we have to remember this again and again is same kind of reason that we need to brush our teeth every morning. We can't just say, oh, I know how to brush my teeth, I've, you know, done it before. We have to do it again and again. If we forget that we are actually a sick person, meaning full of delusions, full of problematic emotions, then the Dharma won't make much sense. We won't even realize, we won't even think we have to do much at all. Why should we practice? Why should we listen if we're okay? So we're a sick person. We should regard the teachings like the medicine. Person imparting it for the moment as a doctor, and think that if we take the medicine properly, we can be cured, you know, if we take the medicine, practice the Dharma. And we can also wish, there's also a practice where we aspire that the teachings last in this world for a very long time, you know. We must create that wish again and again, not to be separated from the teachings. Because when we begin to understand, I suppose, how precious they are, not just talking of words here, of course, but the actual experience that we can generate based on teachings and words, on scriptures, then we realize, don't we, that there's nothing more precious than that in, you know, in life, in a sense. To be able to generate love, compassion, wisdom, patience, all these qualities. What is more precious than that, you know? So may the Dharma exist for a very long time. This is something very beneficial to think, yeah? And then, of course, all the other things we should have in mind, like don't be so interested in the teacher, but in the teaching, not in the words, but in the meaning, and in the deeper meaning, and so forth, using our critical thinking, our intelligence, our discriminating wisdom. By the way, I looked up Shera Prajna, and it was, I think that is what it is, discerning wisdom. I didn't bring the text, but it's there in the Stephen Goodman book on Abhidhamma, I think. So very much Shera Prajna, the discerning wisdom. So we have that. We must develop that more and more. Okay. So we were looking at precious human life, so I don't need to go into that much more, but of course, especially for beginners, we need to look at just the basic teaching again and again and again. So what that chapter was trying to get across is all of the advantages we have, all the difficult states of existence that are there that we are free of, and then all of the advantages we have right now as a human being living at this time, and then the value of this precious human life, the value of it, the three great purposes, and then how difficult it is to obtain. We shouldn't think this is something simple, easy to have such a human life. So can anybody, let's immediately have, this something interactive, and just in case some of us are feeling a bit sleepy. So then, including myself, so what are the three great purposes? Joy Roy asked this question, and we mentioned it maybe 5 or 6 times in the last few days. So who was awake and remembers the three great purposes, apart from Nico La, who's also been teaching this subject? Ji, Sahil Ji. Okay, good, yeah, future happiness of, you mean beyond this life. Okay, what's the second great purpose? Liberation, meaning? Yeah, personal liberation from all suffering to attain the state of nirvana. Fantastic. And now you are going to be a crorepati. What is the third great purpose? Enlightenment. So full marks here to Sahilji from All India Institute of Medical Sciences, who has given us the right answer. Fantastic. Thank you. The three great purposes. And the point that Rinpoche used to make is that every moment of our life, we can either waste it, of course, on garbage thoughts or, negative actions, or we can create the cause to bring into effect any of these three great purposes by restraining ourselves from negative karma, creating good karma, taking refuge and so forth. We can, attain a good human life in the future. And then by aspiring and engaging in, proper ethics in a deep way and in concentration and the practices of wisdom, then we can attain liberation. And, this we can do every day of our life. This is what Rinpoche is saying. This human life is valuable every day, every hour, every minute. And we can also, of course, through practicing the bodhicitta motivation and, the aspiration and the actually engaging in the bodhisattva activities and so forth, we can create the causes for enlightenment. And we can do it now, you see. This is the amazing thing, which we can't do if we were an animal or if we were in hell or, experiencing hellish suffering of one kind or another, or starving to death, or just not interested at all, or having to slave from morning till night just to earn enough to feed oneself and one's family. So, we couldn't do these things if we had all of that to contend with. But we have the freedom. So we are unbelievably fortunate. Yeah. So precious human life. Now the reason why we are going on with the topic of death and impermanence, let me read to you what Tsongkhapa says about the attitude first, the attitude of what he calls a person of small capacity. You remember, some of you, in the beginning we had said these teachings we can somehow, the sign that is this kind of teaching is it speaks about the three kinds of persons, remember? Which is very closely linked, of course, totally linked to the three purposes. So the small capacity person is someone who is aiming for good future life, to avoid miserable rebirth, at least. So what is that? And this is something very important in terms of what we're just going to look at. But further on in the text, quite further on, Tsongkhapa gives a short summary at one point of how do you know if you have the attitude of a person of small capacity? And then this will make sense in terms of what we're going to do. He says, previously, up to now, previously, you have had an uncontrived, वो अपने आप आ जाता था. You didn't have to think much about it. Automatically it came. An or uncontrived interest in this life. In this life. While your interest in future lives has merely been an understanding that follows what other people say. And of course, one may not even believe it. But if you do, it's, yeah, TK, my teacher talks about it so much, and etc. You know, you have generated the attitude of a person of small capacity. When these interests change places, and your interest in the future has become paramount, while your interest in this life has become merely incidental. However, you must make this attitude stable. Thus, once it has occurred, cultivate it diligently. समझ रहे हैं ना? When our interest in the future has become paramount and our interest in this life has become merely incidental, that is the measure that we have attained the attitude of a small capacity person. Forget great and medium right now. This is just a small capacity. So you see how difficult this is. Because, you know, what am I thinking about? I'm thinking about tonight's dinner. I'm thinking about, will I sleep well tonight? I'm thinking about, am I going to get up early enough to practice properly in the morning? Am I this? Am I that? Kal kya hoga? Parson kya hoga? What's happening at the end of October? I need to do this. I need to repaint a particular room. Whatever. All these interests of this life, totally absorbed in this life. Sometimes thinking about death and, yeah, who's going to look after me when I'm old and this and that. But all this life, it's all thinking about this life. Future life? Yeah, I kind of believe in it. Yeah, I mean, I do. But am I terrified of the results of not practicing properly? No, I'm not yet terrified of that, which I should be. I should be much more interested in what's going to happen to me after I die. You know, what is my consciousness going to be engaging in then? What is its experience going to be? You know, because it might not be this human experience anymore. You know, so anyway, Tsongkhapa is saying we must make this attitude stable. That interest in this life should be theek hai, incidental in that sense. Interest in future life paramount, simply also because future lives are endless. This life is 100 years. So what makes more sense? To be just interested in, to be primarily interested in something that lasts 100 years, or to be interested in something endless, literally endless. Even we attain liberation or Buddhahood, doesn't mean our consciousness comes to an end. Consciousness never comes to an end, according to most teachings. There is, I believe, one school in Theravada, in the Theravada tradition, which believes that consciousness ceases at nirvana, but I think that's only one of the 18 major schools believes that. That is not the general understanding of that Buddha wanted us to take on board. Okay, so how do we actually take advantage of this life with all of its freedoms, all of its wonderful qualities? We have to train the mind in the stages of the path of the small capacity person. So one of the actually doing that, you know, how do we develop, as he puts it at the bottom of page 144, if you have the translation, how do we develop a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives? So this has two parts. One, mindfulness of death. Okay, mindfulness of death, the contemplation that you will not remain long in this world. We will not remain long in this world. That doesn't sound very pleasant, does it? intellectually we know this, of course, but the whole point of this chapter will be to go beyond the intellectual understanding. And as I had mentioned before, once it should initially, according to the traditionalists, make us very worried and very upset, and should stop us sleeping properly for a while, the thought of this. Right now, of course, we can worry in a certain way, but it might not be that useful. But we need to look at it in a way that we realize there is an issue, there is a challenge, and there's a way out. There's a way to use it creatively. Okay, the mindfulness of death has 4 parts. So in one way, it's good that none of you is taking notes, but I will be testing you on these things occasionally, and woe betide that person whom I ask, Mindfulness of death has 4 parts. What's the fault of not cultivating mindfulness of death? What are the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death? What kind of mindfulness of death we should develop, and how to cultivate mindfulness of death. Isn't this amazing, this Nalanda tradition, which Tsongkhapa and all also following? Bada clear-cut hai, We can't then say, oh, theek se nahi samjhaya. This is being taught very, very, very clearly. Fault of not cultivating, benefit of cultivating. What does that cultivation mean? What kind of mindfulness should we develop? And then how to do it. How to do it. Okay. Tsongkhapa says first that there are 4 errors that we make that prevent us from taking full advantage of our life. We think the impure is pure. We believe suffering to be happiness, especially this, pleasure and so forth, which for Buddhists is the suffering of change. We believe this impure body in some sense to be pure. In some sense, of course, we know it's not. And especially when we're sick or have diarrhea, we realize it's not that pure. But in one way, we do think the body is pure because we lust after our own and other people's bodies and so on and so forth. And at that point, there is that sense that it is something wonderful. We exaggerate the attractive quality and so forth. We believe the impermanent to be permanent. So whether it's a relationship or this or that or, whatever, we feel, there's something solid there. We aren't, ready for the change. Also, we feel ourselves to be somewhat permanent, So we mistake the impermanent to be permanent. And of course, we mistake that which is without a self to have a self. We believe we have a very independent, real, solid kind of self when that doesn't exist. So in this case, there's a kind of subtle aspect to this and also a gross aspect. Tsongkhapa says in the case of the gross aspect, the gross or coarse impermanence, this is which is your death. The avenue of injury is the very thought, I will not die. There's that, I don't think we get up in the morning thinking that. But, when someone says to you, oh, hope to see you tomorrow, then you say, why hope? We are meeting tomorrow. And if that person who has some kind of Dharma understanding, or at least like me likes to pretend I do, then I say, well, might not be alive tomorrow. Then that person, it feels very foolish and not nice thing to say to someone that you might die before we meet again tomorrow. So there's this thought, I will not die. Everyone has the idea death will come later at the end. However, with each passing day, people think I will not die. There's that kind of thing in the background. Today I'll not die, Why? Because, end of October, I'm going to Bodh Gaya. Middle of October, I'm going to Bodh Gaya. So of course I'm not going to die. I'm going there, and then I'm going there, and then I'm coming back here, and then I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. Certainly not going to die today. So we cling to this thought perhaps even until the moment of death, unless, of course, we get a doctor's pronouncement that we're dying of cancer or something, and then slowly we realize we're dying. But otherwise, in the case of other kinds of death, we will be thinking, I'm not going to die, right until the moment when we die, So if you are obstructed by such an attitude, Tsongkhapa says, and don't bring the remedy to mind, you will continue to think that you will remain in this life. We'll continue to think that we're going to remain in this life. And if you have this attitude, you'll continually think only of how to achieve happiness in this life and evade suffering, thinking, I need this, I need that. You won't engage in religious practice because you don't think about things of great importance, such as future lives, liberation, and omniscience, right? Although you might, perchance, engage in study, reflection, meditation, and so forth, it will only be for the sake of this life. And whatever virtue you create will therefore be of small strength. Moreover, since your practice will be involved also with wrongdoing, with non-virtue, with sins, he says here, I don't know how great a word sin is, but I presume, what is this? Would this be translating a dikpa? Sin? Anyway, what is sin in Tibetan? I'm wondering. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sin, non-virtue, pap. I guess we have pap in Hindi, which some people understand, which some people don't like to use. Anyway, it would be rare then for us to have virtuous activities not to be mixed with causes of miserable rebirths. As Lama Zopa Rinpoche says in his book, How to Practice Dharma, most of our Dharma practice is totally mixed. We do have some good qualities. Of course, we do some good things, but it's so much mixed with impure motivation and not being able to think past this life, usually, And then we also engage in, lots of other activities of body, speech, and mind that aren't virtuous. So our practice is always kind of not very strong, because it's like milk that has been adulterated or too much water mixed with it. And you make chai and it doesn't taste that good, or, it doesn't taste like good, fresh, hearty milk, real milk. There's so many examples there. So everything is mixed. So engaging in pure Dharma, Rinpoche says in that book, it's very rare. It is incredibly rare, because our mind is so caught up with attachment to the happiness of this life. Yeah. Remember the great story of, who is it? Tsongkhapa, with going around the stupa. Anyway, seeing the somebody chanting, sometimes they're meditating, and each time Tsongkhapa tells the person, it's, what you're doing is good, but it would be better if you were to practice the Dharma. And that person gets very exasperated, because he's doing circumambulation, he's chanting, he's meditating. So he's saying, I am practicing, what's the problem? What am I doing wrong? And Tsongkhapa says, give up this life in your mind. That was Rinpoche's translation. Give up this life in your mind. So we're always this life, now, happiness of this life. Of course, is Buddhism saying the happiness of this life is not important? No, it's not saying that. But what it's saying is, if that is our only motivation, then we need to think more, So even if you try to engage in practices directed towards future lives, you will not be able to prevent the laziness of procrastination, which thinks, I will do it eventually. And by passing time in distractions such as sleep, lethargy, Netflix, senseless talk, eating and drinking, there's no Netflix in Tsongkhapa, you will not attain proper achievement. Why? Because proper achievement comes through great effort. It's one thing we will notice if we look at which we are encouraged to do, the lives of great masters, like, Milarepa, Marpa, all these people, life of Tsongkhapa, is unbelievable. I mean, it's kind of exhausting, actually, just to read about what these people did. In one way, it's kind of discouraging, in one way, because you think, I can't possibly do that. A friend gave me a biography of Jamyang Chensei Chökyi Lodro, previous incarnation of Dzongsa Rinpoche. I mean, the amount of practice, teachings, etc., that these kind of masters gave in one short life, which means they didn't live beyond 60, 65, most of these lamas, It's unbelievable what they did in such a short time. The amount of teachings they're receiving, giving, and then writing, and all the practices they're doing, is just extraordinary. So, effort. So if you are thus seduced by the hope that this body and life will last for a long time, you will create strong attachment to goods, services, and the like. As if swept away by the current of a river, you will be immersed in strong hostility towards what prevented you, or what you fear might prevent you from having these objects of attachment. A lot of our anger comes from not getting what we want, right? And what we want are objects of attachment. How many things that we want are actually conducive to liberation, enlightenment, even future life happiness? You have to think about that, The new car, the new whatever person, the new role, the new coat of paint in the room. How much of that is conducive to the three great purposes? So in delusion, that is ignorant of the faults, and as a consequence of this, in afflictions such as pride and jealousy, as well as strong secondary afflictions, we spend our time with them. Yeah. Then we do more non-virtuous actions each day, such as the 10 misdeeds of body, speech, and mind. Yeah, killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, harsh speech, divisive speech, idle gossip, covetousness, hostility, hostile mind, and wrong views. And we give up on the excellent teachings, And this takes us to the miserable realms. It's not just a kind of a short-term waste. It actually throws us at the time of death into miserable realms, which of course we can't see, so we don't really believe in them. But it's amazing how all the teachers, all the great spiritual masterpieces of the tradition, all of the basic teachings of the Buddha, so many of them are talking about the miserable realms of samsara, which mainly here means animal, hungry ghost, and hell. So then death will overcome you, and bad karma will lead you into a hot and unpleasant place, not necessarily just Delhi, among the strong and harsh sufferings of the miserable realms. What process could be worse than that? Arya Deva's 400 stanzas. What could be more dangerous than to sleep as though at ease while subject to the Lord of Death, ruler of the three worlds, himself without a master? No one is in charge of the Lord of Death. No one can overturn the Lord of Death, not even the Buddha. And then the famous verse from Shantideva, I will have to depart, leaving everything. But not knowing this, I committed various sins for the sake of friends and enemies. Okay, so what are the benefits of cultivating mindfulness of death? I don't have the list here, but he says, you will see that trends and material possessions won't accompany you, and you'll stop craving them. You'll want to take full advantage of your human birth through virtuous deeds, such as giving gifts. You will see that all struggle and toiling for worldly things, such as material objects, respect, and fame, is fruitless, is a source of deception. And then you'll turn away from wrongdoing. You will accumulate good karma by doing such virtuous deeds as going for refuge and maintaining ethical discipline. And you will thereby bring lasting significance to things like the body that would not have had such significance. You will ascend to a sublime state after death and will lead others there as well. So what could be more meaningful? For these reasons, the scriptures use many examples to praise the mindfulness of death. In the great final Nirvana Sutra, it says, among all tracks, the track of the elephant is supreme. Among all ideas, the idea of impermanence and death is supreme, because with it, you eliminate all the attachment, ignorance, and pride of the three realms, or the desire, form, and formless realms. So when even, I suppose, a haughty king or somebody really realizes that they have to die, then they also become free of pride and so forth that they had as a very important person, to really understand it. Of course, this is the benefit of cultivating mindfulness of death properly, not just thinking about it occasionally. But if we cultivate it, then these are the benefits. It's praised for being the hammer that instantly destroys all the afflictive emotions. It's for being the gateway into the instantaneous achievement of all virtue and goodness. By seeing aging, the suffering of sickness, and dead bodies from which the mind has gone, resolute people abandon this prison-like home, while ordinary worldlings can never eliminate attachment. Resolute people who study and think about it and, meditate properly, the resolute, they abandon this prison-like home. Ordinary worldlings, meaning people whose mind not yet moistened by the Dharma, they're just totally caught up in attachment. We see this actually. If we actually look at ourselves and we look at what's happening in the world, what people are doing, it's all based on gain, isn't it? Gain and more and pleasure, and it's all attachment. Can you think of anything that is not really related to attachment? Because even anger and war is related to attachment. You're attached to your own security. You feel insecure. So then you have to engage in actions to make yourself feel secure. You feel this place, this land belongs to me or my country. That's attachment. And therefore you engage in measures to grab that, If you can't get it, if you are repulsed, if you are obstructed, there's anger, there's hostility, there's violence, right? So can anyone right now think of anything that is, really not connected with attachment? I mean, for people who are just thinking of this life. Don't say, a bodhisattva, great bodhisattva doesn't have attachment. Of course, and we're not talking about them. We're talking about us, ordinary people, the uninstructed worldlings, ordinary worldlings, like most of us. Can you think of anything? People online or that is not connected with some kind of wanting or attachment? I'll give you a minute.
Maybe just helping a random person with something.
Sonaliji says maybe just helping randomly, just helping a stranger. That's actually quite a good example. If, of course, there might be a subtle attachment, but if you really just did it without any wish for any kind of reward or acknowledgement or thank you, then I suppose we could say it's very much. But I guess the logicians in the Mahayana or whatever might say that if your overall motivation for living is this life, then that action is just another action connected with just something, for this life. That begs a lot of questions. Then you think, oh, am I always supposed to think when I help someone that by helping this person, will it help me get a good future rebirth? That also seems a little contrived, doesn't it? But what would you say? Something to think about. But if we have a strong motivation, which we cultivate, say, in the morning, that may I practice today, even if it feels fake, in a sense, as much as I can, love and compassion and copy, imitate the actions of a bodhisattva in terms of helping people as much as possible, etc., etc. And then one does that during the day. That might be one of the few actions that are not so connected with attachment. But if we are really doing it because we think by doing this, we will just get some worldly pleasure, and because we hear that, happiness comes when we dedicate our life to others, which is what is said, right? Real happiness in life comes when we cherish others. This has been said. So if we're just practicing bodhicitta type actions or a copy of them, so that we have happiness in this life, then again, it's not a dharma action. It's basically attachment. But this is something to think about. I can't think of many things that we people do which is not connected with attachment. Anyone can give another example of something which is not connected with attachment? Given that we have, given that we have this notion that there is just this life. That's quite difficult, no? Unconditional. I think we're always wanting something in return. But if not, then of course, if it's really unconditional, then wow, yeah. No attachment. Anyway, the point here.
Mostly pure, there might be some attachment there, but it's mostly pure.
Depends. Yeah, I'm told, I haven't done the research myself, that a lot of Indian mothers, of course, they won't show much unconditional love very often towards a daughter, unfortunately, and even commit murder, in that sense, feticide, and young girls are not fed properly and so forth. So, so if you have a son, the mother may show a tremendous amount of love towards the son. Why? Because son will help in the future. Son will help me when I'm older, blah, blah, blah. When, of course, that's, in one way, it's ridiculous, because often daughters show more concern for their parents than the sons, But anyway, so I think motherly love, hard for me to say, not having remembered times when I might have been a mother in past lives, but I would say there's probably a lot of attachment to it. And according to the research, mothers, for example, who get a lot of pleasure out of their young children, get the pleasure because of the constant feedback from the child. When you have a mother talking to a very young child, the child is giving constant feedback, if it's a healthy child, with cooing sounds and smiles and gaga, goo, goo, gigi, and all that. And the mother loves it, So it's that constant feedback. So pure unconditional love, I'm not sure. And if it's so unconditional, then does that mother show the same love towards the family next door, whom she may not like, some of them, the parents? Does she show unconditional love towards their children? So that would mean that it's biased, Or if you show a lot of love to people of your community, your religion, but not to others, you may have incredible, what looks like unconditional love towards your children or towards, Christian children or Buddhist children, but you don't have that same love towards Muslim children or Hindu children, whatever. So there's attachment there. The bias, very biased. So, in brief, the only time to accomplish the aims of other beings is now, when you've attained a special life. The majority of us remain in the miserable realms. A few of us come back to the happy realms, but the majority of beings are in situations that lack the leisure of the precious human life. Therefore, you don't get a chance to practice the teachings in those situations. Even when you've gained the circumstances allowing for practice, like all of us, the reason we don't practice the teachings properly is the thought or the underlying attitude, let's say, that I will not die yet. I will not die yet. Therefore, the thought that you will not die is the source of all deterioration. And the remedy for this is mindfulness of death, the source of all that is excellent. Wow, that overturns our usual thinking. The mindfulness of death, the source of everything that is excellent. It's just regarded by most people as morbid, think about death. As I've said many times before, it was kind of like a taboo subject, a taboo word for one of my family members. And I'm sure that's the case in many places. It's not considered good to mention that word, especially on occasions like, lunch or dinner or something. You don't talk about death. And of course, one could say that isn't the best time, perhaps, But then often we won't find a good time to talk about it. Consequently, you should not think that this is a practice for those who do not have some other profound teachings to cultivate in meditation. Nor should you think that although this is something worthy of meditation, you should cultivate it just a little bit at the beginning of the meditation session, because it's not suitable somehow for continuous practice. Rather, be certain from the depths of your heart that this meditation on death is necessary in the beginning, the middle, and the end, and then cultivate it in meditation. So what kind of mindfulness of death should we develop? This is a very important point. What kind of mindfulness? And Tsongkhapa, first of all, talks about the ordinary kind, which is not that useful. For those who have not practiced the path at all, the fear of death manifests itself as the worry that they will be separate from their relatives and so forth. And this fear is caused by their strong attachment. Therefore, don't develop this here. What then should you develop? Certainly nothing of your body which you appropriated through karma and afflictions shall survive death. This may frighten you, yet for the time being you cannot stop it. However, you should fear death if you have not secured your welfare in future lives by putting an end to the causes of the miserable realms. If you consider your fear about this, it's within your power not to be frightened at the moment of death, because there are things you can do to secure your future welfare. If you do not act on these things, you will be tormented by regret at the time of death, in general fearing that you will not be liberated from cyclic existence. What benefit is there? In the Jatakamala, it says, what benefit is there in being frightened and scared of what can't be changed? Thus, when you analyze the nature of the world, humans are regretful at the time of death because they have sinned and have not brought forth virtuous actions. They worry about sufferings to come in future lives, and the fear of dying clouds their minds. However, I do not know of anything I've done that would make me regretful, and I have made myself accustomed to virtuous actions. Then why should anyone who is abiding in the teaching fear death? So if we're really practicing the teaching, then there's no need to fear death, because it will, auspicious or good circumstances will have been created during life, also the time of death, that ensure, happy rebirth. Those who think with certainty, I will die, they give up fear. Therefore, how could they fear even the Lord of Death? So, what's the actual way to powerfully cultivate mindfulness of death? We speak of three root things, 3 roots, 9 reasons. 3 roots, 9 reasons, and then 3 decisions that are made on the basis of this reflection. The 3 roots, who can remember the 3 roots, the 3 root points that we make in the death meditation? All students should know this: backwards, sideways, standing on your head. What are the 3 roots? Okay, Nicolaji, what are they, sir? Death is definite. Time of death is uncertain. Yes. At the time of death, only dharma is of benefit. Yeah, remember all this? You all knew it. It was all there in your subconscious. Yeah, even Rebecca remembers it, although the episode at London School of Economics may have weakened it slightly, but I'm sure you can remember the 3 points. Death is definite, time of death is indefinite, and only the dharma is beneficial at the time of death. Okay, nothing helps except religious practice, it says in this translation, top of page 149. So how do we contemplate? What are the 3 reasons connected with this first point, that death is certain, death is definite? 3 points are made. They're very interesting to go through them properly. In the beginning, they seem like kind of, not childish, but okay, obvious. But when one actually thinks about them properly, as we are asked to, and meditate, then it becomes more forceful. So remember here, what Tsongkhapa is saying is that we gain certainty about death, that death is certain, by reflecting on these 3 points that are coming. Because we might think initially, well, of course I know that death is definite. I'm not stupid, I knew about it when I was 4 or 5, because my pet hamster died, or parrot or something, Badriga. So I know, and then my grandmother died. So I know death is definite. So what's the big deal? What can you teach me about this? So now, 1, The Lord of Death, okay, just say death will definitely come, therefore cannot be avoided. 2, our lifetime cannot be extended and constantly diminishes. 3, while you're alive, this is an interesting point. While you're alive, there is little time for religious practice. So now we go through these 3. Yeah. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to also have the Kopan, I think the Kopan Lamrim guide that maybe has some, oh no, this has got it in detail. This got it in detail. So what does this mean? It's like you can't avoid death. All the Buddhas, all of the great beings of the past, all the kings and queens, everybody who was born died. You know, when you start thinking about it really like that, you know, can you think of anyone who was born who didn't die? You know, then you think, okay, this person, this great person, that great person, and you check them in Google and you say, yeah, they're born, and then Google gives you the year they died, you know, very helpfully, you know, going back. And sometimes it's not clear. They're not sure when that person died, but they died. Everybody who's born died, you know. No matter where you stay, also, death comes. Somewhere to live that is unharmed by death, such a place doesn't exist. Doesn't exist in space, doesn't exist in the sea, nor if you stay in the midst of mountains. So wherever you know, if we were trying to run away or hide from death, we wouldn't be able to do so. It would come to us somewhere, maybe in the most unexpected place, maybe in the cinema hall, you know, wherever. Death's destruction of living beings is no different at any point in the past or future. You can't escape by running away from death, nor can you turn death away by such things as mantras. The advice to the king, sutra. Hold on, let me first read this. Okay, he's saying to a king, it's not easy to quickly run away or turn away from 4 things. You can't turn them away with force, wealth, substances, mantras, or medicine. What are these 4 things that you can't turn away? They're aging, sickness, death, and decay. Great king, aging comes and destroys youth. Sickness comes and destroys health. Decay comes and destroys all that is excellent. And death comes and destroys life. It's not easy to quickly run away from them or turn them away with force or wealth, or to quell them with substances, mantras, or medicine. One Karmapa, I don't know if this means the Karmapa or some other Geshe, said, now we should be frightened by death. And at the time of death, we should be fearless. But we're not afraid now. And at the moment of death, we dig our fingernails into our chests. So the time to be now, so that we're not afraid later. The second is that our lifetime cannot be extended, constantly diminishes. Remember, these are points still connected with the first major root, which is that death is definite. Currently, if we protect our bodies well in order to live comfortably, we may live at the longest 100 years or a little more. That's the maximum now. And days, months, and all this and this. Life diminishes day and night without a break. Rinpoche would often say, you should look at a clock, you should think of the ticking of a clock and the seconds passing. So with each second, you are getting closer to death. You can't say you're getting further away from death. Whatever regimes we're following, we suddenly took up yoga or organic food or eating more, I don't know, omega-3 or whatever it is. And so we think, we're extending our life. Yeah, we might be, but still every second we're getting closer to death. Every second we're getting closer to death. Day and night without a pause. There's nothing that can extend it. Why shouldn't death come to someone like me? When animals such as sheep are led to slaughter, they move closer to death with every step they take. The water carried by the current of a strong river or the water in a waterfall on a steep mountain quickly disappears. Just as in these examples, your life is quickly spent and gone. Just as when herdsmen pick up their sticks, their livestock helplessly follow them home, so sickness and aging lead you helplessly into the presence of the Lord of Death. In this way, meditate on the certainty of death from many perspectives. It is said that everything around us teaches impermanence. Everything. You can, yeah. One good way to reflect on impermanence, I find, is when you're, which has been useful for me, and how things change, is when you're organizing for an event, say a party or somebody's birthday or something, and then you invite a lot of people, and there's a lot of activity, getting things together, food and balloons and music system, this, that, and the other, and then the space in your home is filled with people, talking and drinking, and even some people smoking on the veranda, whatever. All these things are happening, and there may be some music, some dancing, and then and then slowly people start leaving, and then at the end, what you're left with is an empty space. There's an empty space where all these people were. You had that experience? All the plates have been washed up, even washed and sent back to the people who loaned them, and all of this. And it's just like, wow, what happened? This place was full of people and liveliness and music and talk and food and so forth. What happened? It's just gone. You wouldn't know if you came into the room at that time that there'd been a party and, birthday cake and blah, blah, blah. It's all gone. It's totally finished. Maybe a few marks of it on the floor, bits of samosa or cake have fallen. But otherwise, everything changes. Reflect on this again and again until you reach certain knowledge. It's not helpful to do just a little reflection and then say that nothing happened. You say that nothing happened when you thought about it, but when did you reflect? If it was during the day, you were constantly distracted, and at night you slept. So do not lie. At the end of this life, death will destroy you and you'll pass into the next world. Until then, there'll never be a moment when your lifespan is not diminishing. Whatever you're doing, whether you're going somewhere, walking around, or lying down. Thus, starting from the moment when you enter the womb, you don't remain for even an instant, but you're going headlong towards the next life. Therefore, constantly do not rejoice in the thought that while you are living, you are stationary and not moving, towards the next lifetime. Do those who are falling to earth from the peak of a high mountain enjoy happiness in space as they are being destroyed? If they are constantly racing towards death from the time they are born, how can living beings find happiness in the time in between? A miserable thought, but, you know, it's the example of jumping off a cliff, you know, and you know, you're not paragliding. You don't have anything. You're just falling to your death. Is that enjoyable, they're saying, that intervening time? Okay, there's, let's see. Anonymous contributors to common public goods like Wikipedia. Okay, I don't quite understand that comment. All right, so this shows that that was the second part of death is definite. The third part is in some ways also is extremely discouraging sometimes. Or, well, it's meant to wake us up. The contemplation of the certainty of death, such that even while you're alive, there's little time for religious practice. Even if you live for the longest periods explained above, it would be wrong to think that you have time. Much of your life has already been wasted. Half of what is left will be spent in sleep. Many of your waking hours will be wasted with other distractions. Further, as youth fades, the time of aging arrives. Your physical and mental strength deteriorates such that even if you want to practice religion, you lack the capacity to do so. Consequently, you have no more than a few chances to practice the teachings. The Descent into the Womb Sutra says, moreover, half of the 100-year lifespan is covered by sleep. 10 years are childhood. 20 years are old age. Sorrow, lamentation, physical suffering, mental discomfort, agitation take up time. Many hundreds of different physical illnesses also consume your time. I mean, this was written before the media, so now even less time. Even less time. If you subtract from, say, 60 years, which I guess was a good ripe age in those days, if you subtract from 60 years, the time you lose to food and clothing, sleep and sickness, not more than perhaps 5 years are left to devote to the teachings. And in that 5 years, how much is single-pointed, you know, meditation on a virtuous object without distraction? 5 years meditation simply means here some study and listening and practice of the Dharma. I mean, if we look how much time is, I mean, in one way, when you study the teachings, it seems like no real pure practice is going to start until we've at least attained some degree of mental stabilization, you know, shine. Otherwise, we're just totally, we're just distracted most of the time. So 5 years meditation, that would be unbelievable. But it's not 5 years. It's maybe 5 years we are getting a bit closer. This being the case, the wonders of this life will be mere memories at the time of death, like waking up and remembering the pleasurable experiences in a single dream. Think, if the enemy, death, is surely approaching and can't be stopped, why should I delight in the delusions of this life? Decide you must practice the teachings and make many heartfelt pledges to do so. The ruthless lord of death murders powerful beings without purpose. While such murder is sure to come, what wise person would be relaxed? Hence, as long as that great unforgiving warrior has not fired the unstoppable arrow from which there is no escape, strive for your own welfare. We'll stop for today. The actual text, maybe a few points people want to make. We can do. Sorry? Oh, thank you. Yeah, some hot water would be great. Thank you. So, any comments online? No? Anybody here? Tushita? Hope you're not all thoroughly depressed. Although according to Pabonka, we should all lose sleep tonight. Worry now, be unhappy now, so that we have a wonderful death. Thank you very much. Maybe people can be, people who are very upset, there's some nice biscuits. You can have biscuits. Yeah, very nice ones. Very, quite chewy and very nice. But they won't stop death, unfortunately.
Don't make them jealous.
Sorry, people online, you're missing some really good biscuits. Very good.
Selfless act, not to contribute to Wikipedia. We're asking for examples.
Maybe that was it. Yeah, to contribute to Wikipedia is an act of without attachment. Yeah. Thank you, whoever was Sahil online. Yeah, thank you, Sahil. It's very interesting, says Seema. Can we have some meditation to accept the death? Well, all of this is connected with that. All of it is connected. The meditation to accept death is to keep on remembering that death is going to happen and to practice the Dharma so that there is no fear at the time of death.
Abhijit, do you know someone who has practiced death and impermanence for a very long time, a year, 2 years?
Oh, bye. You go off to a party, yeah? Very good. Perfect antidote to class on death. Do I know somebody? Well, I imagine that beings like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these great lamas have done that practice. I don't know of any of my friends who have done that practice very much, although there is one monk who gave a talk here, remember? Yarpel, the American monk. He has been doing a lot. Yes, he has been doing, that's right. He has been doing a lot of practice on death. I'll just have sabko thoda de deta. He's been doing a lot of practice on death. Yeah, that's right. And he's also been teaching it a lot. So he would be the only person I know for sure among Westerners who have done a lot. I mean, whom I know through having heard. In his case, from himself also. Himself
have
said.
they shared their experiences with you with respect to how their outlook has changed, or how their outlook towards the practice has changed because of this long practice of.
It just seems to me that Yarpel, Venerable Yarpel, is someone who just practices all the time. So, and he's someone who had a family, I think. child. Anyway, he was married, he had a job and everything. Then he ordained. And Rinpoche told him to do a lot of practice, Lamrim, stages of the path practice, of which death is one of the early, most important practices. So it seems like he's been doing a lot of that. And he teaches a lot on that. And on the suffering states, the suffering realms, which most people don't like to talk about. Rinpoche used to talk about it a lot, but you don't hear many Western teachers talking a lot about hell or, those things. It's considered not very, it's just, it's not considered that useful. And maybe it isn't for some people. But
Lamrim talks a lot about these sort of different realms that you go to and what kind of suffering you.
Very precisely, yes.
And it also, it at to a point that it is so disgusting to you and you're sort of scared when you sort of, it also talked about how in the hell realm what happens and in the hungry ghost realm what kind of feeling you go through.
Yeah, sure. And I guess part of us is in denial. We say, this is all very well, but maybe. Or we try to kind of psychologize it, meaning we think only this is talking about what could be experienced within a human realm also. As a human, one could experience hungry ghost type experience, hell type. And this is valid also to begin to think of it that way, but it's not the way that the teachings are talking about it, is it? It's about what actually happens when we leave this human body behind. We can also have this other kind of experience without this human body. It's extremely. So it seems that Yarpel did a lot of this practice. Being a monk, is it necessary? I know detachment is important, but having family, how can we work on dharma? Well, I don't have a close family like that, but I can say that I know some people who have husbands, wives, children, and through their determination, through their, you could say, their perseverance, through their interest, they practice. They have a practice. And part of their practice, of course, has been bringing up their children properly and all of that. That's also practice. The people I have in mind, of course, I'm not going to name them, they also practice a lot of patience, it seems to me. They have to. They have kind of, a good relationship with their partners and their children. In some cases, I know people take turns. So if the couple has children, then one person looks after the children. If another wants to go and do a 10-day retreat or something, they go and do the retreat. And then another time the other partner can go. So there is a way to practice, of course. And we might not be able to practice a lot of single-pointed concentration and so forth as a busy family person also who has a job. But for sure, we can practice kindness. We can practice awareness of impermanence. We can practice patience. We have to practice patience, for example. Otherwise, things get very difficult, don't you think? So all of this is practice. If one's just living alone all the time, one might think that one is doing a lot of practice. But how about if you have to think about other people all the time, like your children, wife, husband, and one acts not just for oneself, but always with other people in mind, then one might say that is, excellent practice. Not just thinking about oneself, but actually, taking care of other people as well. And probably very, very close relationships give us, don't they, the opportunity to see our own faults, our own fears, attachments, and so forth. So I think, ample opportunity to practice Dharma if you're not a monk or nun. Plenty of opportunity. And of course, there are great practitioners historically who are not monks or nuns. People like Marpa, the great translator, and there are other examples. And even with modern masters, there are plenty who, some of the greatest masters were not monks or nuns. Lama Zoparinpoche wasn't a monk or nun in the previous life. Last life, of course, he was a monk. Life before that, not. But he was a great practitioner, apparently. We spent a lot of the last 10 or whatever years of his life in retreat, admittedly. But he wasn't a monk. He had a family. He had children in that life. So obviously it's possible to practice. I mean, people have been practicing in jail, some people who were given books and instructions and guidance. They practiced very, very strongly when they were in jail. Even some of them who are on, the death row, which means you're in a lineup for, to be executed at some point, they also practice. Maybe their practice is extremely powerful, knowing that they're going to die. And so, yeah. Anything else? Or maybe enough for today. There's a lot of material. So you could think about some of the things we discussed. Advantages of thinking about death, disadvantages of not. It's all so connected, isn't it, with the previous teaching on the preciousness of this life, It's because we can do so much with this life that we have to make the use of it. And to make the use of it, death awareness is said to be critically important. So let's dedicate. We generate deeper and deeper understanding, appreciation of these teachings, and begin to actually feel the impact of some of the reflections and meditations. And of course, this would be most pleasing to our own gurus and to the Buddhas to actually be doing this. Well, however, let us also dedicate for these teachings to remain in this world for a very long time, for us never to be separated from authentic teachings and teachers. May these teachers have long and healthy lives and all their Dharma wishes for us be fulfilled. May the Dharma flourish in places where it has not yet flourished, or where it did flourish but has since declined. So especially may we provide circumstances for students in India, especially non-English speaking students, to practice the Dharma, to receive authentic Dharma teachings in regional languages. May His Holiness Dalai Lama have long and healthy life, all his wishes be fulfilled. We also dedicate for all those who are sick, ill, and those who have died, and for Sujitji's brother, Sumit, who is soon to go in for surgery. So all these beings to be well, happy, for all their to recover from their sicknesses and so forth. Those who have died, may they find precious human lives, precious human rebirths. May those who are connected with such professions, especially in the teaching sector, education, may their work with young people be successful. May young people be endowed with the courage, kindness, and wisdom to help them navigate a difficult world and difficult circumstances, and help even heal this world to some extent as much as possible. Therefore, may all the educational initiatives started by His Holiness and others be most successful. Create at least a generation of some new, very confident and spiritually intelligent young people. And also, due to all of our study and listening and discussion today, may it create cause for Kyabje Lama Zopa Rinpoche to quickly reincarnate and again be a guide, an inspiring guide for so many of us, so many people worldwide, and inspire us to engage in the Bodhisattva path. Okay, so thank you everyone for your great patience. And tomorrow, let's see, I decided it's about time we did a puja, you know. So tomorrow we might not continue with this topic, but might have some Tara Puja or Medicine Buddha Puja. It's about time we did that. Okay. So thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Yeah.